You just had to kill the other puppy, didn't you? Rest in peace, Shaggy Dog. Rest in peace. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Game of Toms. I am your host, Tom Grossi, and tonight we are breaking down Season 6, Episode 3, Oathbreaker. Right off the bat, just to kind of give you my initial feelings on it, a little bit of a letdown episode, a little bit of a slower episode, a lot less going on this episode as opposed to last week, but still intriguing, setting up some plots for the upcoming weeks, which are very exciting, but we'll get there in a second. Our opening scene, of course, we see that ass. Whose ass? Jon Snow's ass, because he's back. And even better, this is now the third episode in a row that we have seen Puppy, a.k.a. Ghost, already off to a fantastic start. What happens? You get the Onion Knight giving kind of this epic speech. Jon Snow is down on himself. And I think an important part of this episode was they're asking him, what did you see after you died? And he says, nothing at all, which is kind of interesting considering what we know about Game of Thrones lore and their afterlife and this idea of like the Lord of Light. You also have the seven gods, old gods, new gods, etc. But Snow sees nothing. I mean, is that an indication of what's really there in the afterlife, and the fact that he knows that there's nothing after death is kind of traumatizing to him. And he's upset, obviously, and says, I failed. Everything that I tried to do, I did what I thought was right, and I failed. And Onion Knight, of course, goes, listen, bruh, just go fail again, because Sir Davos is pretty awesome. I think also a great part, too, when you have Tormund and Jon Snow meeting again, they're like, listen, man, they're calling you a god. And he's like, I'm not a god. He's like, I know. I've seen your penis. That was perfect. That was absolutely perfect. So, nothing like coming back from the dead, being emotionally scarred, and then being told that you have a small penis. That was the highlight for me. But here's the thing. Before we get into the next part, because I feel like this is going to be one of the biggest talking points of the episode. So last week, after the episode ended, you saw the previews for next week, or as it is tonight. And you saw the Tower of Joy. Now, again, if you've read the books, because they haven't really brought it up in the show, but you're talking about Ned Stark's sister, and this whole kind of rumor that Jon Snow is a Targaryen, in that you have Rhaegar, and Lyanna wind up having a kid. Ned Stark winds up covering to prevent Jon Snow from coming to any harm because he's a Targaryen, and they're all hunting the Targaryens down to kind of hide him. And I was so excited last week that I was like, yes, this is finally going to be confirmed after all these years, after all these books. It's finally going to get confirmed. And it started off great. You have Sir Arthur Dayne, who's been, I don't even know if he's been brought up in the show before, but he was mentioned in the books as the best swordsman there ever was in Westeros. And he lived up to that name because he was just mowing people down. You got a younger Ned Stark, and he's just mowing people down left and right. And it comes down to Ned Stark and Sir Arthur Dayne, and they're fighting it out. And Bran's like, wait a minute. Like, my dad's not going to win this fight. He's obviously not the better fighter. And we've all seen, before this, all we've seen of Ned is just like this very honorable, humble guy. And honor seems to be the only thing he has. And the only thing that's been out of place with that is Jon. This idea that he would cheat on Kat, which is like what readers picked up right away. And also TV show viewers, that he would never cheat on his wife. Like, that's not something that goes against his character. I mean, look, Game of Thrones season 1, you see that guy. Look at that guy. That guy couldn't cheat on his wife. Absolutely not. But the story had always gone that Ned had defeated him, Arthur Dayne, in one-on-one combat. Not the case, though. Not the case enough. You see Howland Reed kind of stab Arthur Dayne in the back, and Ned finished the job off. Now, This is the part where I'm like, oh man, okay, Ned's reputation's taking a hit here, but here we go. We're going to confirm it. I can't wait. I'm so excited. And all of a sudden, there's a yell out in the tower, and it sounds like a female, which would be Liana, his sister. He's about to run up the steps, and something really cool happens in that Bran calls out for his dad. And he stops, and he turns around. Now, you see things from Ned's perspective for a second that there's nobody there. But this is interesting, and I don't really know what this means. So Bran winds up going back with the three-eyed raven, and saying, my dad heard me. And the three-eyed are like, well, maybe. What? Don't give me maybe. And before, I don't think I've forgotten about this. Are you kidding me with that tease? Like, he's going up the stairs, and it's like, book readers, this is what you have been waiting for all of these years. Maybe next week. But maybe episode 9 or episode 10. So that was a bit of a tease. I really wasn't a big fan of that, but we got an awesome battle out of it. We saw the Tower of Joy. This idea of Ned hearing Bran, though, is something that kind of stuck with me. And, Three-Eyed Raven saying, listen, you can't mess with time. You can't mess with the past. It's already written. And I don't know. I mean, is Bran going to be able to alter something? Like, why is he able to manipulate what's going on with time? And Bran is very upfront here saying, listen, dude, I don't want to be an old guy in a tree. That's not my life. That's not the life I'm living for. And Three-Eyed Raven's like, listen, you're gonna get out of here. But first, you just have to know everything. No big deal. So I feel like with Bran, listen, let's put it this way. His scenes have picked up a lot since, the first 5 seasons, even though he wasn't in last season. Because for the past, 4, his story has just been so boring. And like I said last week, I have not read the 5th book yet. I heard he gets a lot better in the 5th book, and that his plot is the most interesting because it involves magic and it's really cool. But on the show, they're still trying to catch him up to that point. And we're starting to get there, and I like that we're able to kind of go and get these glimpses into the past through one of the characters that we're coming to be all right, he's cool again. But a big tease with what happened with that. You also have Dany, so she's going to the House of Old Chicks in Vaz-Dothrak, which is where you have all of these widows of cows go, and they kind of just hang out and have tea parties or something. It still is not really established what they do, but they live there the rest of their lives, have a book club or something, but not really too interesting. And as we know for Dany, she's like, listen, thanks for including me in your club here. Gotta go, though. See, kind of the mother of dragons, so really don't want to stay here. And the head priestess is like, yeah, the problem with that is you went out in the world after Khal Drogo died, okay? So we don't even know if you're going to stay here yet because you might wind up dying. So I feel like this is going to be, I feel like this is Dany's last big test, kind of going through this whole storyline. And I can only hope that we're going to get to the point where, at the end of the season, she's like, all right, let's go to Westeros. And I'm hoping that that's going to happen. You have Varys kind of working his magic in Meereen, finding out that you have the old masters from all these other towns that Dany had conquered, kind of funding these Sons of Harpy, which makes sense story-wise. The Sons of Harpy have always been a meh storyline to me, and what I mean by that is the Sons of Harpy seem to be omniscient. They know everything. They know where everybody's going to be. They're taking out Dany's soldiers, who are supposed to be the greatest soldiers in the world. They're taking them out with ease. Not really the biggest fan of that. But Tyrion and Varys are making that plot more interesting. And I mean, we'll kind of see how it is. It was pretty amusing to see Grey Worm and you have Tyrion kind of having that conversation about drinking and things like that. Pretty good, but again, kind of, I don't want to say filler, but a little unnecessary. And then you find out that Varys's birds, are actually children. And I thought that was a cool little reveal, because you've kind of always seen Varys as this master spy. And he says, I have my birds everywhere. Birds are always getting me this information. And it makes sense that it's children because no one really expects children, especially poor children. You don't really notice them. They blend in. So that was kind of cool to see that little bit of a reveal. And Cersei is full-blown warpath now. She's like, listen, if anybody one time mentioned my name, spelled it wrong on a piece of paper, I want them to die. So she's going full-blown warpath, which it's so weird. This is why I love Game of Thrones, is because, like, I have hated Cersei from, like, season 1. But there's, like, a little part of you that are like, you know what? I feel like I hate other people more. I like Jaime. Cersei's growing on me, and I kind of want to see her, kick the High Sparrow's ass. I'm not gonna lie, I really do. And she's setting it up in that when she gets formal charges, she's going to request a trial by combat. She's going to have Zombie Mountain Sir Gregor fight for her. And this is where, spoilers, I mean, this is potential spoilers. This is me thinking about it. This is what's been rumored for quite some time. That the Hound, who got name dropped again tonight, we'll get that in a second. The Hound is not dead. That is my guess. That's not a spoiler. That is what I'm predicting. The Hound is not dead. And you're going to have the Hound fighting on behalf of the Faith and the High Sparrow, and it's going to be brother versus brother. You're going to get that Clegane Bowl. So that intrigues me, and I'm very excited about that. You also had Tommen kind of confront the High Sparrow this episode, and I was like, okay, this is going to be the episode where Tommen is not such a wuss. And he continued to be such a wuss. And I think the weird part about that entire dialogue with him just being, like, really quiet and just, like, having the... That was his face a lot. And the High Sparrow's, like, talking about, the gods and the mother and, Cersei loves you, blah, 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 blah. The thing that seemed off in that conversation is Tommen never mentions his wife that is in, like, the dungeon 60 feet away from him, but he's like, yo, listen, you gotta leave my mom alone. Like, my mom who's, living in the castle now and trying to kill all of you, leave her alone. But my wife, I mean, who? So that was a little weird. But again, Tommen really doesn't interest me whatsoever. He's kind of just a weak king. He's a weak pawn. And Cersei's going to kind of just use him. While Cersei does love him, he's just going to wind up being used. We saw a bit of Arya. Arya's getting back. There's kind of a Rocky IV training montage with her getting beaten by a stick a bunch of times, still blind. But eventually she starts fighting back. She's able to see. And what happens is she goes to the death pool. And that pool that we've seen into the fountain where they drink and then they die, all that great stuff we saw last season. Arya is about to drink from it, and she gets hesitant and is like, I kind of don't want to die, but she takes a sip anyway. Her eyesight returns to her, and she really claims that she is nobody. So it seems like, again, Arya is taking even more steps to becoming a badass assassin, which I am very excited for. And two more things. One, like, why'd you have to kill the other puppy? Like, come on, like that. Any harm that comes to puppies in this show, I'm not a fan. Like, season 1, you have Sansa's puppy dying. Bam. Already upset. Arya's not dead, is off wandering away somewhere. Okay, good. Robb, you have Grey Wind. Her puppy, head cut off, put on top of Robb, killed another puppy. Not happy about that. Shooting with the arrows, that was the worst part of the Red Wedding. By far. Okay, maybe like the whole stabbing the pregnant chick was pretty bad too. But the puppy was a really close second. And then in this episode, you have this gift being given to Ramsay, which is Rickon Stark, who we haven't seen, in 2 or 3 seasons. He kind of just went off somewhere. But he's back in this episode. Shaggy Dog is dead, which makes me very, very sad. But now that Ramsay has Rickon, I don't think it's going to be so good for him. But again, it's this idea of maybe you do keep him alive because he's kind of going to be used as a power play. But we'll see kind of where that ends up. And then the final scenes of the episode are great. So you have Jon Snow. He's walking up and he faces all of his traitors who are at the gallows. And one guy asking for last words, 2 guys who we don't care about. And then Alistair dies kind of with a sense of pride, saying, listen, like, I thought I was in the right, being, it was either betray you or betray the Watch. And if I had to do it all over again, I hope I would make the same decision. And while we all hate Alistair, at the same time, I feel like you can kind of empathize with him a little bit. As in, you see this guy who's been on the wall. He's seen what the wildlings have done. And you gotta remember, he also hasn't seen the Night King. He hasn't seen all these dead army zombies coming at everybody. So he's just going from the perspective of, John's just letting all these wildlings in. And then we get to Ollie, which is by far probably the greatest death all season that's gonna occur. Even if like every crappy person dies, this was great. Snow looks at Ollie. Ollie's just giving you, I'm a prepubescent. I'm just so angry, man. You just don't understand me. My parents were killed. And I killed Ygritte, which I still haven't forgiven you about. But he doesn't say a word, and Jon Snow's just like, all right, well. And I was concerned because Snow cuts the rope, and I was really, really concerned that he was gonna cut Ollie down and like spare him. But thank God he did not. And that kid died. And I don't think I've ever been excited for a kid to. This sounds terrible. I think I'm a terrible human being. I don't think I ever would have said that sentence. I'm excited that kid died. Well, that's Game of Thrones for you. But yeah, that kid turned blue in the face. He's dead. And he died with a scowl on his face. But the big thing at the end is that he kind of hands his coat over, and he says, "Burn it, wear it, do whatever you got to do. My watch has ended." So I'm only hoping that what this means is it's going to lead to Jon Snow taking his army of wildlings and marching on Winterfell and just kicking Bolton's ass. That's really what I am really, really hoping for, because you killed another puppy. So I want Ghost, that puppy, to kill everybody and avenge all the other puppies. Because really, that's what Game of Thrones is about. It's about boobs, puppies, and dragons. That's it. That's all there is. And Tyrion, because Tyrion's pretty awesome too. There was also that scene too about Sam and Gilly, but no one really cares. I mean, so let's be honest. If your favorite character is Sam and Gilly, I mean, I wouldn't say you're the only one. Actually, I would. You are the only one. But that's it for this week's episode. If I had to give it a ranking, I would say, 7.9. And by that, it's just like, because nothing really happened. It was kind of just like aftermath and kind of setup, and that tease really bothered me. Actually, I'll push it up to the 8.0. I'll say it's around the same thing as the premiere. I'll give it a full-blown 8.0. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Game of Toms. I'm Tom Grossi. If you like this episode, please check out the previous episodes I've done. Check out my reaction video from last week. Subscribe. And thank you so much. If you have any questions or anything like that, let me know in the comments. What do you think is going to happen? And I'll see you next week. Puppies out.